All right, then I will get right on the exclusive right to represent buyer agreement. And since we're all here talking about compensation, I'm going to skip right to paragraph 8, which is talking about compensation. The first question, and going back to one of your comments that we've already received, is can I get paid twice? Because I'm getting paid under the compensation of the buyer agreement, and then I'm also going to get paid under the listing agreement and the first page of the contract. And the answer is no. Nobody, that was, number one, it was not the intent. It was never the intent. I find it funny that when all of this first came out with the NAR and the lawsuits, everybody was running around like the sky was falling, saying that the buyer's agents are never going to get paid again. That was the one thing we all heard. Oh my God, I'm a buyer's agent, I'll never get paid again. And then with the documentation, they're like, oh my goodness, this is good news. I'm not only not going to not get paid, but now I get to get paid twice. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work the other way. It's still where we were. Basically what it's saying is buyer broker compensation, you fill in the blank. It's either going to be a percentage or a flat amount. It says buyer's responsible for payment of broker compensation at settlement. If broker receives any compensation from seller or seller's representative for services covered by agreement, that amount will be credited towards the buyer's obligation. So it spells it out exactly there, who's paying what. So on page 1 of the contract, and I know I'm stealing somebody's thunder, it says seller payment towards buyer's brokerage compensation. So if you fill out 2.5, this is the other question. If you fill out, I'm a buyer broker and I get 2.5, and it says 2 on the front page of the contract, you've got a 0.5 point at play out there, and it's up to your buyer to pay that. Now, yes.
Let me ask the flip side of this question to you. If you agree with the buyer in this agreement that the commission that the buyer broker will be paid is 2.5%, and the seller is willing to pay 3%, what is the commission being paid to the buyer's broker?
2.5. You are not to benefit from anything outside of your agreement. Whatever the seller has going with the listing agent is separate from what you have agreed to take as the buyer.
And can you fill in what folks used to do is print in the words as per MLS? Is that still acceptable?
You know what? That's a great question. No, I would say, no, I was going to say, no, because it says specifically in here, broker may not retain any additional compensation from any source that exceeds the broker compensation. So you've defined it, you've said it, you're done.
Absolutely.
The question is can I, as the agent, say, oh, they're such good friends of mine, and I said 2.5, but they only offered 2. Can I waive that 0.5 between you and your broker? Because keep in mind, the document is not signed by the agent. Document is signed by the broker. So as we do now, an agent comes to us and says, hey, I'm going to pay $500 to repair a light fixture. What do? Have your broker send us a letter saying it's okay, because whose money is it? It's the broker's money.
Absolutely.
So, there we are. You're not getting paid twice. You've set your payment, and anything gets credited from the seller side.
But I think it's important to note too, yes, the brokers and the agents are not signatories and not parties to the sales contract, but they are third-party beneficiaries under those provisions, especially with respect to the compensation. And and this is where I think communication comes in, because if you have a situation where you have on the buyer's broker side, you've got an agreement for 3% compensation, and then the seller offers 2 or 2.5%. So now there's a delta there between what this buyer has agreed to pay the broker and what the seller has agreed to pay the buyer. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, was how do you handle that delta? And again, I think it's conversation, just like you said. And that is, hey, buyer, you've promised me 2.5. My showings to you will have a stack, and I will know as part of my homework what the compensation is going to be that's being offered. Now, if they're offering me 1% and you've promised 2.5, then it's going to be our discussion as to how we're going to handle that. Do you want to see that house? And the second interesting set of conversations that we've all had on this is this buyer agreement shareable to us as the title company? And I know that Josh is going to cover this because it's in the contract, and that is, we have to see this, and it is permissible for us to see this. What I envision with the people that, work close to the chest is that the buyer has to come out of pocket, say 0.5%, and their lender doesn't know it because they haven't shared this with us or the lender. And we get to the table and they say, oh, by the way, you have to add an extra 5K. And a couple weeks ago, I did a closing where there was $150 that had to pay off on a credit card in order to qualify the buyer for the loan. So if we're haggling over $150, $5,000 is going to be a major kick in the teeth. Sure. Yeah, it is. And then I am going to get on the phone with the lender and say, hey, I have a change to your CD. And after they get off the floor from laughing at me, and I tell them it's $5,000, you want to talk about a non-closing at that point? So this buyer agreement, the listing agreement, all of the broker compensation agreements are all defined and named in the contract, and they have to be shared, and the privacy
In some form, yeah. I think that you're going to see, if there is concerns about the confidentiality of those agreements, we'll start seeing more broker letters and authorizations from the sellers and buyers that are signed at the same time, either authorizing the release of those brokerage agreements or a short form, essentially.
And I hope we don't get there. I really hope we don't get there. That's one more, these poor brokers, I mean,
I think it's an easy change to navigate, but it's going to take time to kind of get there.
Yeah, I just hope that it doesn't. I just think the brokers are having to, get involved in too many deals with too many numbers and let's just keep it simple. Give me the document that says what I put on the CD. That would be easy, right?
And I think that that's the main point, is that if you are the selling agent and there is a delta that so that the seller is not fully covering the compensation that you and your buyer have agreed to, it has to be brought up at settlement. If you don't, I think there is certainly an issue of a waiver. So if later on they then wanted to go to court and try to enforce that, because the agent is there as part of the entire process, they've been negotiating, so they know what's in the contract, and they go through settlement, and it's on the settlement statement, and then subsequently, so there's a number of times when the agent or the brokerage could have intervened and made sure that there was a collection of the full amount on there. If you sit on your hands and you don't tell anybody, and it gets past the time of settlement, even though there may be a legally enforceable document for additional compensation on that back end, you have issues of waiver on there and other issues that I think the court. Yeah. Well, and why do you even want it? The fact is, why are you putting yourself in a situation where now you've got to bring a suit against your client? That's time, money, cost, loss of goodwill.
Well, as a selling agent, I mean, why don't you just add it to the conversation up front? We're going to go look at Smith Circle, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, price is $550, and the offered compensation is 2%. That's not, I mean, I'm not an agent, but that just doesn't seem like that's a big deal to me. And that way they go, oh, okay, 2%, I promised 2.5, I know it. I'm going to hopefully disclose it to my lender. And if not, you know, we are, when we have to balance the numbers for the CDs, we disclose it. So I think, again, and we keep saying this, discussion and communication, discussion and communication.